It's like a central tenet in modern politics. People will find reasons, and maybe that's because they want to extract personal favors. And maybe, people talk about the establishment all the time, Jake. I think the Democrats have an establishment. They have sort of a centralized control. They can make people do things. Republicans have none of it. By definition, you don't have an establishment if 4% can depose your speaker. By definition, you don't have an establishment when you get more popular by quote-unquote bucking the establishment. It negates the existence of the establishment. And so we just have a very different dynamic here. It's democracy. It's messy. We're going to get through it.
So I heard one hypothetical that after the next, so that Jordan doesn't get it, and I should also note, just like, there are Republicans who don't like how he was kind of like one of the conspirators on the attempt to overturn the election. There's that whole OSU thing with whatever. I don't want to get into all that, but like, there are people who thinks he has a lot of baggage. Then it goes to some other round and like somebody else tries and doesn't get it. And then I've heard this hypothetical where people say, well, let's just bring McCarthy back. And either that happens or McHenry gets it by default. Is that possible, you think?
Anything's possible. These are very unlikely. McCarthy has to actually want to run. There's out of protest, some members will vote for McCarthy. He has no intention of running. Jordan has been a true ally to McCarthy, at least from everything I've seen and what McCarthy is saying now. And what I would remind a lot of the members who are against Jordan, because his reputation precedes him, but his reputation has changed over time. He has become part of the solution, not part of the problem. He has long since been part of the solution. A lot of good conversations with him. I've gotten to know him. There's a reason I support him.
He was trying
giving McHenry additional powers. Well, that still requires a vote, and what kind of powers? I mean, at a certain point, you're just electing him speaker.
Yeah.
And so, and he doesn't want that. He's asking us not to.
I mean, he defied the congressional subpoena and he was trying to get Pence to overturn the electoral votes. But anyway, you're in the Jordan camp.
But a lot of them did that. If I held that grudge, I wouldn't have friends in the Republican
That's
conference.
two-thirds of the conference. That's an excellent point.
I was on an island there.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, Congressman Crenshaw, it's always good to see you, sir. Thank you so much. Coming up next, their lives were forever changed by the brutality of Hamas, but those who lost the most 8 days ago, well, they have a message for all of us that you might want to hear.
Meet Milo. He's part border collie, part terrier, and part party animal. Meet the new Bissell Little Green Hydro Steam Pad. It's part portable upholstery cleaner, part ground saver, part steam-powered stain remover, and part party animal patrol. Every purchase saves pets, like Milo. Bissell, a new breed of clean.
There's challenges, and I love overcoming challenges.
When Better Money Habits content first started coming out, it expanded what I could do for Special Olympics athletes with developmental needs.
Thousands of Bank of America employees like Scott spend countless hours volunteering to teach people how to reach their financial goals.
It felt good. It felt like I could take on the whole world.
What would you like the power to do?
Why didn't we do this last year?
Before you were preventing migraine with Qulipta? Remember the pain? Cancel plans, the worry?
That was then. And look at me now. You'll never truly forget migraine, but Qulipta reduces attacks, making 0 migraine days possible. It's the only pill of its kind that blocks.
Nice fallback and polylingual song. Also been interested in living inside of the free world. Sorry about my pain I'm going through, my name growing, and I experience suffering. Sorry.
I was trying to explain things, but I think you can hear them now.
In southern Israel, there's a visit by Britain's Foreign Secretary and his Israeli counterpart.
We are living close to monsters, to inhuman people. And we are fighting for our own, and we will win.
Are you considering a humanitarian corridor
I don't
for
want to
Gaza?
speculate. I'm
not going to speculate on what support we might want to give.
Minutes later, they're bundled towards a bomb shelter as sirens warn of an incoming rocket attack. In the north of Israel, thousands of extra troops are being deployed to reinforce the country's border with Lebanon. So when I look out here, I can see the wall that divides northern Israel and Lebanon, and just this morning there has been an exchange between the two sides. Hezbollah fired an anti-tank missile into northern Israel, and in response Israeli warplanes struck a Hezbollah piece of infrastructure, they said, across on the Lebanese side. And there is real concern right now, real anxiety that these regular exchanges that are happening could lead to a deadly escalation just on this hilltop over here. In Jerusalem and across the country, the biggest mobilization of army reserves in Israel's history gathers pace. Some arrive from around the world. Yasha Yakovlev is 28 and lives in Austria. He's left behind a wife and 2 young children.
There is nothing more important right now, not my job, not my studies, not everything, not even my family. Only our job and only what we're doing here.
This is more important than your family?
Unfortunately, we're currently in a situation where I have to say that. I didn't even imagine that I would ever say something like that, but I have something.
Another fighter jet, that's the second one in the last few minutes.
I didn't even think that I will say something like that ever, that there is something in the world which is more important for me than my family. But unfortunately, the reality has changed, and here we are.
There are tearful goodbyes as reservists head off to serve their country.
It's 8 o'clock on Thursday, the 12th of October. The headlines this morning. The United Nations says almost 340,000 people have now been forced from their homes in Gaza by Israeli airstrikes.
Day 6, shortly after dawn, Israel bombs another apartment block in Gaza. It's in a refugee camp. Residents say many had fled there, trying to get to safety. They bombed without warning, says this man. This is murder. It's huge. Everyone has to do something. Many are wounded, but hospitals now depend on generators after Israel's siege cut the power. Food and clean water are running out. Israel says there'll be no supplies until its hostages are freed. In Israel, CCTV from Saturday's attack shows Hamas fighters entering Kibbutz Be'eri. Homes there were completely burned out. This one belonged to Vivienne Silva. She's been missing ever since. Her son is searching and remembering.
What do you think your mother would be saying about everything that's happening right now?
That this is the outcome. This is the outcome of war.
Vivienne was making light of it until she couldn't.
We may be witnessing a massacre. Enough sense of humor. I'm just telling everybody, telling you I love you. And I write back, I love you, Mom. She writes, they're in the house now. I said, I have no words, I'm with you. She writes, I feel you. And that was it. That's the last message.
On a visit to Tel Aviv, America's top diplomat tells Israel that Washington's support is unwavering.
You may be strong enough on your own to defend yourself, but as long as America exists, you will never ever have to. We will always be there by your side.
Friday, day 7. The UN says it's been told by Israel that everyone in northern Gaza must relocate to the south in the next 24 hours. It would mean the entire population of Gaza City and its surroundings, about 1.1 million people, having to flee their homes. The Hamas-run Interior Ministry has called on Gazans not to respond to the order to move, calling it psychological warfare. After a week at war, there's no sign of an end to the crisis. Millions of Israelis, Palestinians and others are reflecting on events that few saw coming and no one will ever forget.
Israelis are shocked and they're grieving because what they have seen are the most unimaginable scenes of brutality and horror with these massacres that are being carried out. They've had to bury loved ones. There are families that still don't know where their children are because they're being held hostage in Gaza. And then in the strip you have Palestinian civilians who are living under bombardment. They're seeing death and destruction all around them every day. There's no electricity, the water and food are running out. Everything has been turned upside down. This last 7 days has shocked the world, and now people are asking, what's next?
Join me on my perfect feel-good vacation adventure in Penticton, BC. Well, that might leave a mark. And I did it all fuel-free. Almost. Wow, this is gorgeous.
Mounjaro helps your body regulate blood sugar. And Mounjaro can help decrease how much food you eat. 3 out of 4 people reached an A1C of less than 7%. Plus, people taking Mounjaro lost up to 25 pounds. Mounjaro is not for people with type 1 diabetes or children. Don't take Mounjaro if you're allergic to it. You or your family have medullary thyroid cancer or multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2. Stop Mounjaro and call your doctor right away if you have an allergic reaction, a lump or swelling in your neck, severe stomach pain, vision changes, or diabetic retinopathy. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis and gallbladder problems. Taking Mounjaro with sulfonylurea or insulin raises low blood sugar risk. Tell your doctor if you're nursing, pregnant, or plan to be. Side effects include nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, which can cause dehydration and may worsen kidney problems. I can do diabetes differently with Mounjaro. Ask your doctor about once weekly Mounjaro. I've been waiting for somebody just like you. Hoping, praying, run away to something new. My mistakes brought me to this place. I had to fall to get to you. Find your someone and the lead single.
Stop! I am a good zombie! This October,
Trick or treat!
spirits come home to rest all month long.
This place is really haunted. What a weird mystery.
With Hollow Stream on Disney+.
We're gonna scare you. Boo.
Home is where the hunt is.
It's time.
Wednesday nights are mystical on APTN.
We might uncover something that's secretive.
Tag along on a paranormal investigation on the other side.
I have goosebumps right now.
Witness a psychic medium connect the living with the dead on Spirit Talker. And visit haunted locales across Ontario on Ghost Hunters of the Grand River.
And the place that everybody's always afraid of is just the hallway.
New seasons begin Wednesday, October 25th on APTN.
Stilton supported apparel is engineered with 90 feet of high-strength cables that reinforce the body and control dials that
trusted by weekend warriors, Olympians, and professionals who want one thing: more activity and less pain. Get back to what you love with Stoco.
Hair has always been central to my identity.
Once I started taking Nutrafol, I could see my hair get thicker. It's also made my hair stronger.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement. Start your hair growth journey at Nutrafol.com.
Live from London, this is BBC News. Israel continues its bombardment of the Gaza Strip, with fighter planes and drones striking targets across the territory. Hospitals in Gaza have been told to evacuate, but doctors have told the BBC they will refuse to do so. Meanwhile, thousands of other Palestinians continue to flee to the north of Gaza. Our correspondent says he and his family are living in a room with 4 other families.
I, for example, with my family, I share a very small space. It's like 2-bedroom with about 4 or 5 families.
Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu holds a first cabinet meeting for his new national emergency government. The US Secretary of State is to return to Israel following talks elsewhere in the region. I'm Christian Fraser, welcome to the programme. People in the northern half of Gaza are continuing to flee the area ahead of an expected Israeli incursion. Thousands of troops are already massed on the border with Gaza. Airstrikes have continued today. Israelis say over 100 military targets were hit overnight. Among those killed, a senior commander involved in the attacks in Israel last week. Hamas has continued to fire rockets into Israel, towards Tel Aviv and other areas in the south. The World Health Organization has again called on Israel to rescind its evacuation order. The decision, they said, to force hospital patients to relocate would be a death sentence. A hospital in the southern city of Rafah by the border with Egypt says it has been told to evacuate. The diplomatic push is continuing to try to prevent the violence from spreading. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been in Cairo this afternoon and is expected to return to Israel for more talks tomorrow. It is still tense on the northern border with Lebanon, with further exchanges of fire today. The Israelis have set up a 4-mile buffer zone on the border. The US is sending a second aircraft carrier to the eastern Mediterranean. The USS Eisenhower will join the Gerald Ford group that is already in the region as they seek to put pressure on Iran and its proxy Hezbollah. We start the hour with this report from Nick Beak.
Gaza is bleeding. Its hospitals already full, deluged with more patients. These some of the youngest victims in this latest chapter of an ancient conflict has now erupted so violently. Israeli airstrikes continue to kill civilians in Gaza, bringing more searches amid the rubble, often in vain.
Dozens of families were massacred. We're beyond capacity. We're treating people in the corridors and on floors. This is a very dangerous situation.
Israel says this is self-defense to ensure its survival, and that this aerial bombardment is a proportionate response to the atrocities Hamas committed a week ago. From outside Gaza, a glimpse of the aftermath of the Israeli raids. All day, we heard military jets heading towards their targets. Israel says its assault on Gaza is only just the beginning, and that it will be followed by a major offensive by air, land and sea. United Nations agencies say that Gaza is being pushed into an abyss, and that by forcing the evacuation of more than 1 million Palestinians, it is, for the most vulnerable, a death sentence. Israel reinforced its ultimatum that civilians in the north of Gaza must move to the south. It said it opened another supposedly safe corridor for 3 hours today. It accused Hamas of blocking routes.
Residents of Gaza City, I call on you again. Hamas is trying to prevent your evacuation. We will allow it. Get out of Gaza City and the surrounding areas for your own safety.
Many Gazis who have tried to seek shelter at schools run by the United Nations say getting out is impossible.
They said leave towards the south, but there is no transportation. Some cars got bombed by airstrikes. During the night, the children hugged me and screamed, "Save us! Save us!"
Gaza's border to the south with Egypt has been closed, so leaving that way has not been an option. There are trucks full of aid waiting to go into Gaza, but for now, they're going nowhere. A population of more than 2 million trapped, as Israeli forces say they're on their way in. Nick Beak, BBC News, in southern Israel.
Our Middle East correspondent Tom Bateman has been monitoring events for us from Jerusalem. He outlined the preparations that are being made following a meeting of the Israeli War Cabinet.
It's hard to tell when, if a piece of activity is connected to the potential start of a ground invasion, because we were seeing artillery fire, for example, even by the middle of last week. We've seen other activity with localized incursions actually over the last sort of 3 days, where the Israelis have tried to attack rocket launching squads, and in one of those 2 or 3 days ago they said information that could lead them to more information or knowledge about the hostages that are being held in Gaza. So there's a lot going on. It doesn't always mean that it's significant when it comes to the potential timing of this ground invasion. Clearly it is going to happen. We knew that from a very detailed statement from the Israeli military last night, that this huge operation of logistics to supply a front line when it begins has been amassing. And what the Israeli military are saying this morning now is that it is now a political decision about when it starts. So that would signify that they are ready but waiting for the green light.
I've been following some of the interviews this morning with British officials here, Tom, and the numbers missing keep changing. I know the number of dead and missing in Israel keeps changing. Can you explain a bit of that to us, a week on, why the numbers fluctuate so much? Are they still uncertain of who is in Gaza City and who is dead and bodies not yet found?
It is exactly that. I mean, it's been the task of identifying the remains as they found them. I mean, a lot of that area around the Gaza Strip was in utter chaos, and it wasn't until in some of the places affected by the heaviest fighting, it wasn't until well into the week that the Israeli forces were fully gaining control, and even then you were getting sort of sporadic reports of potential gunmen on the loose or in hiding. So it was chaotic, and in terms of the number of fatalities, a large number of bodies have been taken to a military base where they have been going through this task of identifying remains. Now that's taken a long time, and it's still going on. So in terms of them understanding who is who's missing but has died, as opposed to who is being held in the Gaza Strip, they haven't known.
Tom Bateman there in Jerusalem. Let me just show you the live pictures that I can see in front of me here. This is looking from Sderot on the Israeli side towards, there you go, from Sderot towards Gaza City. You'll see that another big dirty plume of smoke there on the horizon. We've seen a lot of activity in that open area. There's about a 3-mile open area between Israel and the built-up areas in the Strip. So beyond that would be Jabalia, one of the original refugee camps, was once one of the most populated areas in the world, densely populated area, but a large part of that will have been evacuated in recent days. And if I show you the pictures from Gaza City, you'll see there a fresh explosion as well in the heart of the city. in the last few minutes. Again, similar pictures that we've seen throughout the course of the day. So a lot of activity ongoing. Let's get to Ashkelon on the Israel side, in the southern part of Israel, where our chief international correspondent Lise Doucette has been watching. No word yet, Lise, as Tom was saying, on the ground incursion, but certainly enough reason to think that they're preparing the ground for those troops to go in.
Yes, all the signs are there. The thousands of troops which have been massing on the border for the past week, the artillery and armour, we've seen it racing past when we've gone down towards Sderot, to the edge of the closed military zone. There's also the non-stop bombardment, almost since those massacres by Hamas on Saturday morning. The Israeli army keeps updating us on how many targets. Is it hundreds, sometimes thousands of targets a night? We also heard a few days ago that they had carried out, with reconnaissance unit, a limited raid inside northern Gaza. They said that they were looking for some signs of where the hostages could be, and that also they had been able to track down some Hamas cells. So phase by phase, they are building up to what they have not said that the political order has been taken, but the military preparations are almost there. I have to say, we woke up this morning and there was rain, and we know that there are reports that we have contemplated starting a bit sooner, but this bad weather held them back a bit. Weather matters a lot in war. And meanwhile, on this side of the border, there were a lot of rockets into Sderot this morning. You mentioned that. You showed our viewers the scene there. We've spent the last few days right on that corner. Sderot was evacuated today. When we were there earlier in the week, the mayor was frustrated that some people weren't leaving. They said they didn't have resources, they had nowhere to go. Now we understand an official evacuation took place today. That border town, about 30,000 people, most had gone, but there were still some stragglers. Ashkelon today is relatively quiet. Yesterday, almost every hour, there was an air raid siren going into the night, but so far today, relatively quiet. But there have been rockets in Tel Aviv too.
Well, indeed there have. There's a lot of diplomacy ongoing as well, Lise. We've been watching pictures of the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, heading around the Middle East, Riyadh, then to Cairo this afternoon, and then news that he's coming back to Israel, which in terms of our timing, you would presuppose there wouldn't be a ground invasion while he was in the country. Does that perhaps then suggest that maybe tomorrow is not the day?
Well, I don't think, even though the relationship is so strong, they're the strongest of allies, I think the military has its own clock, whether or not Anthony Blinken is here. But it is interesting, Christian, that he has come back. He will come back with a number of messages, I think. He talked to the King Abdullah in Jordan. He was in Qatar, where many of the Hamas political leaders are based. In Saudi Arabia, where, of course, the Saudi leadership, they're a major role within the region as the custodian of the two holy shrines. And, of course, before this all happened, they seemed to be on a path to the recognition of the Jewish state. And then, of course, a message from Egypt, which always plays a mediating role. It's right on Gaza's southern border. It has a role to play in terms of the humanitarian side, and with all this discussion of a possible buffer zone. So I think Anthony Blinken is gathering all those messages from the Arab world, Arab leaders who are all watching this so closely and with nervousness, and then coming back to see what he hears from the Israeli side and whether or not there is some way they can align. But it's rather the jagged edges right now.
Yeah. We've been talking this afternoon on the programme, Lise, to our colleague and friend Rushdie Abu Alouf, who is in, has relocated his family to Khan Yunis, which is about halfway down the strip, and he was telling us just how difficult it has been even to source water. A man of immense resources like Rushdie, struggling to find a bottle of water in a shop. In the last few minutes, the White House has told us that Israel is putting back the water in southern Gaza, which will be some relief, because there were people who were trying to source water from agricultural places. There was no water in the hospitals. To turn back on the mains in southern Gaza, that is a step forward at least.
That is very interesting, because that's another piece falling into place. When Israel gave that evacuation order, telling more than 1 million Palestinians they had 24 hours to basically pick up and go at a time where going means on roads that are strewn with glass and rubble, where whole streets are cement and ash, and where the bombardment is continuing. And of course, we've been hearing the reports that once they get to the south, they wonder, where can we stay, where is safe. The fact that the water has gone on, that must have come under huge pressure. That may signal that the south is being prepared as a possible relatively safe area, although the bombardment is continuing there. But it sounds as though they are trying to set up, they're trying to divide the strip, go through it piece by piece, rather than everyone on the run with nowhere to go. So I think with every hour we are seeing slowly this puzzle being put together, even though a lot of pieces are missing and a lot of them still don't fit.
Liz, it's good to see you. Do stay safe. Thank you for joining us on the programme. Let's go to the northern border then, to Lebanon, to speak with our Middle East correspondent, Hugo Bashega, who is there. And it's been very lively this morning, Hugo. A 4-mile buffer set up on the Israeli side, lots of exchange of fire. What are you hearing from the Lebanese authorities about what is happening?
Yeah, Christian, so the situation here has been very tense, and I think you can probably hear the sound of, it seems to be a march here of people with Palestinian flags and also Hezbollah flags. So today it's been the most intense day in terms of cross-border violence between Hezbollah here in Lebanon and Israel. Earlier today, Israel had its first civilian death as a result of an attack carried out by Hezbollah. A man in his 40s was killed when the community of Ishtula was hit in an attack by Hezbollah. And in the last hour or so, we had the IDF, the Israeli military, saying that it had retaliated after Hezbollah carried out another attack targeting positions in northern Israel. And we had an update from Hezbollah in the last few minutes saying that it had hit an Israeli military barracks in the kibbutz in northern Israel, causing a number of casualties. So we haven't had confirmation from the Israeli military yet, but I think it shows how tense the situation is here along the Israeli-Lebanese border. And perhaps as an indication of these tensions, we've had a number of different players reacting to what's happening here. Just moments ago, the Israeli defense minister said that Israel was not interested in engaging, in waging a war against Hezbollah. We also had comments from the US National Security Advisor, who said that the Biden administration was holding back-channel conversations with Iran, warning Iran against escalating the situation here. Iran obviously is Hezbollah's main supporter. And on the other hand, we had some comments from the Iranian foreign minister. He was here in Lebanon yesterday. He had talks with the Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, and he said that if the United States is interested in preventing an escalation of this conflict, it should tell Israel to stop what he described as brutal attacks against civilians in Gaza. So I think it shows how tense, how difficult the situation has been along the Israeli-Lebanese border. And I think the fear here is that Lebanon could end up, becoming a part of this conflict.
Hugo Bashega in southern Lebanon, thank you very much for that. I'm going to bring in Dr. Eyal Khulata. He is a former Israel National Security Advisor. He served with the government from 2021 to January this year. He's currently a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies based in Washington. Doctor, thank you for being with us on the programme. Perhaps you could just talk to us about these operations that we're watching on our screens just south of Sderot. What do you think the Israeli military is trying to do? Because there seems to be repeated bombardment of an area, a sort of an area before the built-up area of Gaza City.
Well, first, Israel is mounting its counter-strike against Hamas. The government made it very clear what our goal is. Our goal is to remove Hamas from ruling Gaza. Hamas lost every legitimacy to rule the population of Gaza. They chose 9 days ago to mount the most deadly terrorist attack Israel had since its existence. In fact, this was the worst day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. when they chose to do this instead of taking care of their own people, they made that strategic choice, which was really unfortunate and totally unnecessary, but this is what they did. So the purpose is very clear. We are preparing for an attack that would end with the removal of Hamas from the ability to rule Gaza. Now, we will not...
I understand that, but just specifically to these pictures that we're looking at, this area, what do you know, as a former security advisor, what do you know about this open ground between Israel and the built-up population?
Hamas has built over the years a vast network of tunnels underground. They keep everything underground. They used to have tunnels that would infiltrate into Israel. We took care of that with the wall that is underground with concrete, but we cannot take care of everything. The military is operating right now in places where there isn't heavily populated Palestinians because we do not want to target Palestinian citizens. So we're operating where we can, and the next stage will mount when the population leaves northern Gaza to the south, where it's safe, where we're providing what is necessary, so we can go after the Hamas terrorists in the northern part of Gaza with as little casualties and non-collateral damage as possible.
One of the things that we saw in the morning reporting was that the objective will be, although it's yet to be confirmed, the objective will be to occupy Gaza City. Is that? Do you think that is inevitable? If you're trying to decapitate, Hamas, you have to be on the ground where they are. So would you imagine that would be the purpose of the incursion?
The government did not say that the purpose is to conquer Gaza and to reoccupy the Gaza Strip. This isn't true. Israel has no intention to go back and to occupy Gaza Strip. Israel has an intention to remove Hamas from leadership role of Gaza. There are very many ways to do this, and the best way to do this, by the way, is to have all of the countries in the region understand that the fact that Hamas is ruling Gaza is not in their interest. Frankly, it is not in the interest of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Israel does not have to conquer the entire Gaza Strip. Israel does not want to conquer the entire Gaza Strip, but Israel will operate in very meaningful and decisive ways to eliminate Hamas' ability to govern and to eliminate as many terrorists and leadership of them as possible.
Just a quick word on the water being switched on in the south of Gaza today. You might have heard our correspondent Lise Dissett speculating that...
Leave me something. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks. Ciao for now. After leaving a message, you can hang up or press pound for more options.
Hey, Sonny, can you escort me to the hospital this morning? Or the other place? Walking? Right? Oh. Oh. Oh.
I think clearing the target area is very important for military operations, but of course it's no good at all in the situation of Gaza when people have nowhere to go. So I think it's encouraging to see this. I think it is right that Egypt obviously has a role to play, and we'll see what comes out of further negotiations in Cairo, and whether that further improves a lot of the Palestinian people trapped at the moment in Khan Yunis.
Okay, Justin's going to stay with us because we're going to hear plenty more from him in the next half an hour. We are going to go to a short break. Just another line that we've just seen as I show you some pictures from Gaza City. There you go. You can see the plume of black smoke which has just appeared on the skyline there in Gaza City. Why might that be? Well, because we've heard that Hamas, the arm wing of Hamas, has fired 20 rockets this afternoon towards Israeli settlements, and that is perhaps one of the reasons why the Israeli army has been responding. We'll take this short break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Giving us a heads up. And warning us before we cross them. So that when life doesn't give us the yellow line,
Can you grab that?
we know what to do. Let's keep it preventable. Hey, Stacy, what do you think he's doing with that ball?
Oh no, he's gonna throw it in the trash. I can't look.
Wait. He's putting it in his bag to recycle later.
Way to go, Mr. Brown Shoes.
Bravo, sir, bravo. Hey, up here.
Hey, Sis. Is he looking? Right here. I can watch humans all day long.
We are, and we do.
I'm Rahel Solomon in New York, and this is CNN.
Protesters took to the streets throughout the Arab world this week to stand in solidarity with Palestinians. I've asked Rashid Khalidi to help us understand the Palestinian and Arab reactions to this escalating war in the Middle East. He's a professor of modern Arab studies at Columbia University, whose most recent book is The 100 Years' War on Palestine, A History of Settler Colonialism and Resistance, 1917 to 2017. He is Palestinian American and has family in the Gaza Strip. Rashid, welcome. Before we get to Gaza and the West Bank, I do want to ask you something that I think a lot of people in America have wondered about, which is why is there not stronger Palestinian outrage about the Hamas's terror attack, the brutality of that attack, the way in which it really seemed to be utterly indiscriminate, women, children. There was a hope that if Palestinians were looking for a different path, they would at least think this would be one thing they could condemn. How would you respond?
I think the utter hypocrisy of the West in ignoring indiscriminate killing of infinitely larger numbers of Palestinians, 4,000 of them, mostly civilians, killed in Gaza since 2006 by aerial bombardment from Israel, have desensitized people. They feel that there's a complete lack of attention to Arab humanity. So far, 2,300 Palestinians have been killed, most of them civilians, and we see very little of the kind of moral condemnation that the killing of hundreds and hundreds of Israeli civilians has provoked. So I think that the reaction is partly a reaction to that, and partly a reaction to the fact that no political horizon has been offered to the Palestinians for decades. They're basically told, you will be subjugated, you will be second-class citizens, if that, you will be dispossessed, we will take your land at will. And the United States has basically not just supported, but financed and armed that process. So people in the Arab world, when they see no political horizon, are willing to turn to Hamas, willing to turn to acts that in normal times people would consider horrific. But they see the horrific toll that has been inflicted on Gaza by siege 16, 17 years, by periodic bombardments, killing hundreds and hundreds of innocent civilians. And I think they say, well, humanity is humanity. If you want us to condemn the killing of civilians in Israel, what about the killing of civilians in Gaza and elsewhere in the occupied territories?
But surely the right response, Rashid, would be to condemn the killing of civilians in Israel and in Gaza. In other words, not to be indifferent to both.
I don't think people are indifferent to both. I don't think that's the issue. I think that they feel that these demands for condemnation of the horrific terrorist massacres by whoever it may be, Hamas in this case, are never matched by demands of Israeli spokesmen, of Israeli politicians, of Israeli academics for condemnation of the horrific terrorist massacre of, in this case, 720-something children in the last 6 days in the Gaza Strip. If this is horrific and terrorist, that is horrific and terrorist. I abhor the idea of the killing of civilians. But civilians are civilians. Children are children. Jewish children are more important than Arab children. Jewish civilians, Israeli civilians are not more important. But that's the way the West is treating this, unfortunately. And that hypocrisy, unfortunately, undermines this whole argument.
Let me ask you about the question of the political option, because this is, there's so much heat around this that I want your take. It is all true, not the Netanyahu government, I will grant you, but two prior governments, the Omer government and Ehud Barak, did try to make what I think was a serious offer of a Palestinian state. And in both cases, the Palestinians essentially walked away. Abbas, from what we can tell, never responded to Omer, and Arafat essentially launched an intifada. So isn't it fair to say that the efforts by different Israeli governments than this one, not Netanyahu's, were not met by Palestinians in a productive way?
Well, I can't, in the 2 minutes that we're going to have, I can't go into the details. But none of the Israeli proposals, nor from Rabin, nor from Omer, nor from Barak, involved complete Palestinian sovereignty and independence. None of them involved an end to occupation. None of them involved an end to settlements. You can't have a Palestinian state with hundreds of thousands of Israelis settled there. You cannot have a Palestinian state if you don't control your borders. In other words, what was on offer was never anywhere near the minimum of what is required for a just, equitable two-state solution. That was never on offer in any of these Israeli offers, however far they went. I could go into detail if you want, but I think that's the problem. And the last thing I'll say is these things were quite a while ago. We've been 10 or 15 years without anything of this sort being offered by anybody.
I want to ask you about your family in Gaza and what you're hearing on the West Bank.
Well, I have more family, obviously, in the West Bank than in Gaza. These are in-laws who are in Gaza. They seem so far to be safe. Some of them had to move. In the West Bank, the situation is quite terrifying. 16 people were killed yesterday. A couple of hundred of people have been killed in the West Bank in the last week. Settlers are roaming unchecked, armed settlers, and people are very afraid. We're running out of time, but I do want your take on this issue of a wider war. Do you worry about that? Is that a prospect? I think we are seeing ethnic cleansing in Gaza. 1 billion people have been displaced already. Israeli strategists and generals have talked about emptying Gaza, about moving a large part of the population of Gaza. If that happens, heaven forbid, and if the casualty rate continues to climb, there is a possibility of an expansion of this war, not just to Lebanon, but perhaps even wider. And I think that people should think very carefully about what happened the last time this level of ethnic cleansing took place in 1948. It produced Arab-Israeli wars that went on and on and on from 48 until this day. People should be aware that if you move that number of Palestinians, the rage and anger in the Arab world will not abate. Arab governments that are undemocratic and unrepresentative may kowtow to Washington, but people in the street are not going to. And we've seen that in huge demonstrations in Baghdad and Sana'a and Amman, all over the Arab world, even in Egypt. So I think we should be very careful. What we're allowed to see on American TV screens is not the full picture of what's going on in Gaza, because Israel has kept reporters out. The death toll keeps going up, and the expulsion of people, if it's made permanent, means that we're going back to a 1948 type scenario, and that's terrifying. That ethnic cleansing created this conflict in a certain respect, and I shudder to think of what might come if that happens again.
Rashid Khalidi, thank you for being on. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Next on GPS, Israel's intelligence gathering abilities are said to be among the world's best. So how did the country not see the horrific Hamas attacks coming? We'll hear from Ronan Bergman, who will have some answers when we come back.
Thuma, defined by simplicity, meticulously crafted, to be enjoyed for years to come. Thoughtful bedrooms for modern living.
I have moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Thanks to Skyrizi, I'm playing with clearer skin. 3 out of 4 people achieve 90% clear skin at 4 months, and Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, had a vaccine, or plan to.
With Skyrizi, nothing on my skin means everything. Ask your dermatologist about Skyrizi. Learn how AbbVie can help you save.
There are more ways than ever for identity thieves to steal your information. LifeLock alerts you and works to fix problems with a dedicated restoration specialist. Go to lifelock.com.
Meet Milo. He's part Border Collie, part Terrier, and part party animal. Meet the new Bissell Little Green Hydro Steam Pet. It's part portable upholstery cleaner, part ground saver, part steam-powered stain remover, and part party animal patrol. Every purchase saves pets, like Milo. Bissell, a new breed of clean.
From knead the dough to knead it now. So many ways to save. Life ready, wallet happy. That's 365 by Whole Foods Market.
Why is Aaron happy? Well, Carvana has tens of thousands of cars under $20,000. So Aaron's folks could help hook him up with a new ride. We'll drive you happy at Carvana.
They line up by the thousands, each one with a story that breaks your heart. Like Revette, every step brought her pain. Their only hope, Mercy Ships, the largest floating civilian hospital in the world, bringing free surgeries to people who have no other hope. $19 a month will help provide urgently needed surgery for so many still suffering. So don't wait. Call 877-426-8845 or donate at mercyships.org.
We will no longer be prisoners to you, Winter. We shall fly south to where the courts are eternally bright, and we will do so with Consumer Cellular. The same coverage for up to half the cost. When freedom calls, we're here to answer. Lumify?
It's kind of amazing. Wow. Lumify eye drops dramatically reduce redness.
In 1 minute.
And look at the difference. My eyes look brighter and whiter for up to 8 hours. Lumify really works. See for yourself.
When you have auto glass damage, trust SafeLight. My customer really relies on his car's advanced safety system.
You're right. Yes, what happened?
So when he got a cracked windshield, he turned to SafeLight. We're the experts at replacing glass and recalibrating your vehicle's camera so automatic emergency braking and lane departure warning work properly to get you back on the road safely.
And that means a lot.
Schedule now.
SafeLight Repair, SafeLight Replace.
We can't calculate our total taxes.
Sales tax, real estate credits, solar incentive.
And we have no way to integrate all that.
No, but BDO does.
People who know BDO.
It's true. Contacts are great until they get dry.
So we created new BioTrue Hydration Boost for contacts for a boost of moisture that lasts up to 8 hours. So all kinds of contacts can stay comfortable throughout the day. And it's preservative free. Stay BioTrue to your eyes.
Israel has one of the most sophisticated spy networks in the world. It spends billions of dollars each year on military technology and talent, all to protect itself in what can be a hostile neighborhood. But last Saturday, Israel was blindsided. Joining us to understand what went wrong is Ronan Bergman, one of Israel's leading investigative reporters. He's a staff writer for the New York Times Magazine. He's covered the country's intelligence agencies for decades. His most recent book is Rise and Kill First: The Secret History of Israel's Targeted Assassinations. Welcome, Ronan. Simple question to you. You are the man to ask this. What happened? How did Israel not anticipate this attack?
So, Farid, it happened exactly 50 years and a day after the previous, what was considered until last Saturday, the biggest blunder in the history of Israeli intelligence, the surprise attack on the 6th of October 1973 of Egyptian and Syrian army. The result is amazingly, frighteningly the same. A surprise strategic attack that Israel knew nothing about and caused Israel unbelievable damage. But it's different. 1973, there was a lot of information, much intelligence from all kinds of intelligence. They saw the Egyptian army, they saw the Syrian army, but they interpreted the intelligence differently. This case, there was nothing until the last night where there was some kind of a scarce alert. Israel was either not monitoring the right channels, not recruiting the right agents, or maybe it was Hamas who learned from previous experience, who learned from his masters in Tehran, the Quds force of the Revolutionary Guard, and was able either to create a parallel channel, or maybe even understanding which channel are under the surveillance of Israeli intelligence and feed those with false information, with information that made Israel believe that Hamas, relatively to Hamas, is under one of those relatively moderate. Hamas doesn't, they said he's deterred. Just 5 days before the attack, the National Security Advisor of the country said in an interview, Hamas is deterred. He knows what would happen to it in another case of defiance. Well, he didn't know. The National Security didn't know anything. And so, no intelligence, no ability to understand, and we are talking about massive operation. 2,000 perpetrators crossed the fence that day. So there were 3,000 at least people involved. These must created intelligence noise, and none of that was picked up by Israeli intelligence.
You pointed out in a very interesting article in the Times that Hamas also seems to have known more about Israel than most people realized. That they had maps. For example, there's this photograph of a Hamas operative or terrorist looking at a map which is clearly fairly detailed. They knew about the kind of weaponry. Tell me, there's the picture we're showing of that map. But tell me, what do you think this? First of all, how did they get that, and what does that suggest about ground operations? In other words, if Hamas had planned this carefully for the attack, can we imagine or assume that they will have prepared for what they assume would be a likely Israeli invasion?
We'll start first with this kind of leakage, massive leakage of information from Israel to Hamas. The ability of Hamas to understand what are the vulnerable points on the fence, how to cripple the cameras and the automatic machine guns, what base it should attack to create this kind of blind spot, this fog, that and didn't allow the commanders, the ones that were not killed, to understand that massive troops are just crossing the fence. But from the story that Patrick Kingsley, the New York Times bureau chief in Jerusalem, and I published, this is coming. Those pictures are coming from a GoPro that counterterrorism unit of the Israeli army took from the head of a Hamas team leader shortly after he was killed. Now, what it shows, it's a group of Hamas perpetrators, 10 of them on 5 motorcycles, they're not stopping in the way. They have a a specific goal, which is a secret intelligence hub, not identified on maps. They go there. They don't go to the main gate. They know to go to the side, to a side gate that is not manned, exploding that, going into the base, looking for the bunker, the secret bunker, and when they don't find it, the commander tells one of his soldiers, "Give me the map," and he's holding a map of that base. Now, this could be a map based on satellites, but the identification, where is the secret bunker, how to get there, and we have this from all other groups, designated groups that crossed the fence, the broken fence in 40 different places that day. Hundreds of different groups, each allocated to a different place with a clear map of the area and understanding what the enemies, what are the challenges. After that, Israel would need to have a very serious investigation on why Israel was not able to understand Hamas secrets, while Hamas knew quite a lot about Israeli secrets, and used those horrifying videos. Those videos are not coincident on the social web, the social network. You see, even when they raided that base. Sorry.
Ronan, we have a minute. I just want to ask you about who is being blamed here, because I was struck by a Jerusalem Post poll. I don't know, how accurate it is, and I make that caveat, but 4 out of 5 Israelis said that they held Bibi Netanyahu responsible for the failure, and there seems to be a real sense that the Netanyahu government was too focused on judicial overhaul, too focused on West Bank expansion. They kind of took their eye off Gaza. Do you think there's something to that?
More than something. And it was published so people could see that. Now, the intelligence community did not bring precise alert, but for months, some of it published. The leaders of Israeli defense establishment and intelligence community came to Netanyahu, showed him top classified intelligence, saying this is how Israeli enemies seize the political crisis. They believe that Israel is weak. They believe that this is the time to strike. Mr. Prime Minister, they told him, you must stop this so-called legal reform or judicial overhaul, because if you continue, they will use this opportunity to strike us. Netanyahu did not listen. In many of the cases, he even refused to see the leaders of the intelligence and the military. He continued, contrary to the advice he got, he continued this legal reform. He continued to polarize the country in a way that was perceived by Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, as here is our enemy in its low ebb, its weakest point. If we want to strike, we, the axis of Mukawama, the axis of resistance, this is the time.
We got to go, Ronan. That is as always, it's so informative to talk to you. Keep up this amazing reporting you're doing. You give us stuff nobody else does. Next on GPS, what do you need to know about Hamas? How did it get so strong? When we come back.
Only United Healthcare Medicare.
Hamas Get So Strong, a song by Paul Beckman, Polly Williams song. Also the new first leader of humankind in the free world, created October 15th, 2023. Apologies for my moaning and groaning. I'm feeling terribly sick. Could be diverticulitis, could be my brain injury, I don't know. How did Hamas get so strong? 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 How did they get so strong?
Take us to, 1987, I think, is when Hamas is founded. This is a point at which the Palestinian Liberation Authority is the PLO, headed by Yasser Arafat, is seen as the voice of Palestinian resistance, the main political movement. It had an armed wing. It did terrorism. Why did it get founded, and what was the goal?